People pleasing cost me dreams that were 10 years in the making. And I didn't really realize it. And I mean, really, it didn't hit me until I was by myself, bawling my eyes out at a retreat in Palm Springs, California. And I was in a position where I was seeing for the first time just how I had given up and delayed and self-abandoned in terms of my dreams and put those beautiful brainchild babies on hold in perpetuity in favor of a path that I thought was going to, in a really roundabout and kind of manipulative, low-key victimhood or high-key, if we're going to be honest, kind of vibes. It was just a situation that I had gotten myself into. And it went on for years. And this was my eighth year, actually, ninth year in business. And this is how long it had been going on for. So let me catch you up on what was happening at this point. I had been working in the back end of people's businesses for 8 years, 9 years at this point, launching, doing copy, messaging, all the things, right? And I thoroughly enjoyed my work and really leaned into the skill set and expertise that I was gaining and then developing and then refining and then really becoming a master of over the past 9 years. The problem with this was that I, in quite frankly, a sort of misdirected decision, committed to building my business over building my dreams. And I made the two mutually exclusive in a way that completely sabotaged any ability that I would have had to build those dreams. And so all of my time, all of my energy, all of my capacity, all of my money was dedicated to building this business and delivering for clients, working back how like in the back end of their businesses, in their funnels, on their launches, on their marketing campaigns, on their email sequences, on their stuff. And because I'd been doing this for so long, actually, y'all, so backtrack for a second, because what really happened was I'd been doing this for a very long time. And then in 2023, I was really fed up with my lack of growth. And I was like, you know what? Screw this. We're not doing this no more. We're over it. We're done. We are going to make this work. And so and this was the end of 2024. I was at a conference talking to some wonderful, really damn smart ladies who had created phenomenal careers and phenomenal revenue in their businesses in the world. And I was like, I was sharing with them where I was at and how I was feeling. And this was the end of the conference, too, by the way. So, like, we had already gone through some really massive shifts and transformations and opened up a lot of stuff, right? And this is one of those conferences that's very intimate and like calls you up into your next step, your next thing, your next level, right? And so I was sharing where I was at with them, and they were like, Chelsea, you know what is required to make the money you want. You say you want six figures, you say you want seven figures eventually, you know where you have to start. Stop running from it. And where I had to start was with building a micro boutique kind of agency and doing the done for you work that I had been running from for years. In the sense that running from it as like a full-on offer that I sold in my business. Because I was already doing the work, but it was more as like a contractor for folks and not as so I would the vibe was definitely like freelancer. But not really, because I didn't have to like pitch for these jobs or anything like that. And so I was 100% their Girl Friday, right-hand person. Nearly every client I work with, that's what I turn into, right? And so that happened for all the years from 20, call it 20, I started business in 2015. And from then up until that point in 2024, that was how it worked. Was like me showing up and giving my absolute best at whatever skill level I had because I studied biology. And so, like, I didn't have marketing skill sets when I first started out in 2015. And so I was gaining experience on the job working with all kinds of random clients, y'all. I worked with a woodworking business, I worked with a radio station, I worked with all kinds of clients, random people. And then in 2016 is when I really started to lean all the way into copy and messaging and not intentionally picking up this skill, but because I was working on launches, picking up the skill of really understanding how a launch works and why it works the way it works, what makes it work well, what doesn't make it work well, etc. Right. And so from 2016, when I really started to understand and lean into copy and messaging and launches, up until 2024, this was the pattern. Back end in people's businesses, doing my absolute best, right hand person, but not really offering this as a full on done for you service. And so they were like, sis, you know what you got to do? Stop running from it. Make it work for you. Because my fear, if you've watched my video on like what agency life was for me, my fear was always that I would replicate that. And I didn't ever want to experience that again. Not realizing, Dutch Chelsea, you can build your agency the way you want to. It doesn't have to be ruled and dictated by these particular stipulations. In any case, they prompted me and they were like, ma'am, you know what you have to do. Go do it. I was like, okay, fine. I teared up talking to those ladies because I was just like, I don't want to do this. I really don't want to do this, but okay, I will face my fear and do it. That's literally what I felt like. So January came around. Actually, this was in October. And so I went home and I had a conversation with a biz bestie who I had met at the same conference the year prior and met in person. We had known each other for a year, even a year before then. And she like I told her about what I was going to be doing, and she's the first person that hired me for this. And then I was doing back end in another client's business, and then like this became the thing that I did in 2025. And y'all, I was tired. I was because again, remember 2016 to 2024, the pattern was always Chelsea becomes the right hand woman. Chelsea becomes the dependable, the reliable, the one who will do anything and everything to make sure that you have as much success as you can possibly have. Right? I was so tired up until that point. And don't get me wrong, I had taken multiple breaks. Like it wasn't like a burnout situation, right? But I was definitely in a place where I knew that I was signing myself up to do so much more than I even realized I was signing myself up for with this whole micro boutique agency situation. And so by the time that I really started delivering for my clients and doing this done for you offer and running my own agency, um, and a handful of clients, like less than 5, which was fine with me. I actually didn't need any more than that because we were launching like every quarter, if not every other month. So we were booked. We didn't need nobody else, right? And we were getting pretty well paid. And that was my first 6-figure year in business. And so I made myself a position where I essentially multiplied what I did from 2016 to 2024 for every single client I worked with. And when I tell you we were launching every month, we were launching every single month. Not every single month, but like prep for a launch. We're either prepping or launching something or debriefing something and prepping something at the same time. It was madness. And I got through to October of 2025 so like run ragged in the sense in a very mental way, not even a physical way, a very mental way. And in a lot of ways, I think an energetic way too, because mentally, I was actually in a position where I was over delivering so much for every single client that I was not delivering at the standard that I wanted to. And so it was always the inner critic was always on my shoulder, hounding me, pushing me, being real mean about what I was not doing and what I knew better about. Meanwhile, clients are happy. People are making money, having their best launches ever, booking their most spots ever that they've ever had for a program launch. And Chelsea is like unhappy, feeling like I can do better, right? And so by the time I got to October 2025, your girl was mentally taxed. And you know that, like, for those of you who have that perfectionist recovering situation, that really mean, loud inner critic that you have grown up with all your life, that very used to performing at up here, which is excellent when everybody else is excellent, is just good. All of my high performers in the room, you understand when I tell you that the mental taxation showed up energetically. So it was taking a toll. It was taking a toll on me personally, and it was also taking a toll on the business financially. Because what also happened was that because I was stretching myself so thin to ensure that my clients were getting the best results that they could possibly get, and they were, what I ended up doing was having to bring on people to help me. Obviously, you can't run an agent. I mean, nowadays maybe you can run a one person agency because you have AI systems and stuff like that to help you out. And so in 2025, I probably could have done it, but I didn't have the time and space to set up the systems that would enable me to do it. And so I had to rely on humans, which ain't nothing wrong with. We love paying people well for the work that they do. And so I was happy to do that, but I was bleeding money. And I rehired one of my coaches at the time, and I was like, "Sis, help me. This is more than I thought it was gonna be. Help me." And y'all, in that coaching arrangement, we were up in here doing big girl math, like big CFO level financial management. Okay. So Chelsea was like acquiring financial skills like on the fly. And recognizing as a result of all of that I was hemorrhaging. I was hemorrhaging finances, I was hemorrhaging energy, I was hemorrhaging capacity, and I couldn't keep going like this. And my coach had floated the idea of, hey, you're going to need to raise your rates. Because if these are your financial goals and this is what you're charging and this is what you're delivering way more than one you even told these people you would deliver. Like half of the deliverables that you told me are not in the contract, which was true. Again, I'm used to operating up here. And so I tend to downplay a lot of what I delivered, or I used to downplay a lot of what I delivered for people. Um, and would just be willy-nilly giving my absolute best work, even though that's not what they asked for and that's not what they signed the contract to pay me for. But Chelsea is out here doing it, right? By any means necessary. Even if it means bleeding money and bleeding energy and bleeding mental capacity and energetic capacity, she is doing it. Okay. All right. That was the contract I made with myself, apparently. And so my coach was like, ma'am, you're gonna need to raise your rates. Okay. And the people on your client roster right now, you're going to need to be able to tell them that you're raising your rates. And I want you to think about your options and think about what is before you. Okay. And think about what happens if they say no versus if they say yes, etc., etc. This was before the retreat. I went on that retreat with that like my coach was the one who was hosting that retreat. And the it was either the first night when we arrived or the second night. I I remember arriving. First of all, this place is gorgeous, right? Like the place that we're staying is already way above my typical lifestyle in terms of just like stepping into physically what the space looked like. This doesn't look like where I live. Okay. Now, asterisk being that, how do I say this? It's not that I feel like my standard of living is less. Okay? Because let's be real, I live in Jamaica. I live where y'all vacation and it's 24/7. And side note, Palm Springs be dry. Palm Springs be so if you know anything about Jamaica, you know that Jamaica is humid. Jamaica has a lot of water vapor in the air. Yes? And Chelsea's hair is high porosity. Chelsea needs the extra moisture. Chelsea's skin is also high porosity. There needs to be moisture in the air so that my skin and my hair can thrive. Not me showing up in Palm Springs, wearing my hair out and be like, yo, this is a problem. Because there's literally no humidity for any humectant ingredients in my leave-in conditioner to draw from the air. There's nothing. There's no water vapor. I am dry to the point where, y'all, I am walking around with like a lotion bottle and an oil bottle. And these are those bottles that the travel size ones that you can buy like sets in all the places where you can buy these things. And so I filled that with my lotion, and I think I also had like coconut oil or olive oil or something in the other one, right? So my lotion and my coconut oil, and of course in my room I had my leave-in conditioner to the point where I'm walking around with these things, right? And my pants did not have pockets, which I was mad about. And so, and also it was like two bottles. So like it not go fit comfortably in my pants pocket because you know how them does with this pants pocket story. The one of them tiny, right? And so I am literally walking around with these things, leaving them on couches, leaving them on tables, to the point where one of the ladies is like, whose juices and berries are these? Oh, that's so funny. I was like, me, it's fine. Of course, this is Jamaican. Like, I have to be moisturized. I have to have some kind of moisture. Anyways, yeah, all this to say, I sat through the first night of the retreat and felt so called up into like possibility. And so like it felt like the version of myself that I was aspiring to when I started my business in 2015. I felt that was the most like her in my business that I had ever felt. And she took up space. She was damn smart and she was personable and she was able to be in a room of high performers like herself and own that high performance for the first time in a way that didn't have anything to do with what she wanted people to do for her, or didn't have anything to do with people pleasing in any way, didn't have anything to do with fawning in any way. I was fully myself in that room, and the voices of my inner critic around like the voices that police my social behavior, because they do. I talked about this in another video about like making friends and like getting a social life. By the way, it's the same coach that said to me, get a life, that I talk about in that video. She's all right or die, y'all. And so I really I really felt my most embodied CEO expert self in that room. And it was a wild feeling to experience. Without the people pleasing, without all of the social policing, even if there was a little, it was so turned down. Like just being completely outside of my own environment, being in a completely different space, my hair dry, my skin dry, whatever it was. Being in the room with those ladies and my coaching person, whatever, the combination of all of those things really created in me and created space for the version of me that could show up, take up space, and own that space in that room and move very differently than I had ever moved in my business before. And so I sat there the first night, and the first full day into the second night. And I was listening and I was participating and I was teaching and I was talking. It was a mastermind kind of a vibe. So we were each sharing what was working, what we need help with, etc. And as I listened to the other ladies talk, and as I felt the floodgates of possibility begin to swing wide open at high speeds and acceleration, and this rush of a flood pour out upon me, because that's kind of what it felt like. The flood of possibility was upon me. I'm being dramatic, but stick with me here. As I felt that, I went back to my room and I cried. And I cried because I realized, Chelsea, you had possibilities and you sacrificed them. You abandoned yourself. You abandoned your desires. You abandoned your dreams for trying to build this business in a way that was never supportive to you and actually fed your worst tendencies. And what it has cost you is 9 years of these desires on your heart completely delayed and never seeing the light of day, when so many of them could have already been started. And even if they started and failed, at least you would have known. It's been 9 years. You have no idea what it could have looked like, and you sacrificed that. Y'all, I bawled. I bawled my eyes out in that room because I couldn't believe, like, listening to these ladies and all the things that they wanted to do in their business and their lives. I felt for the first time in a very long time in my business that absolutely anything was possible. The life I wanted to create, absolutely anything was possible. And the moment I realized that anything was possible, I was like, oh, wait, if anything is possible, all of these dreams were possible, are possible. And I left them with the version of me that created this business 9 years ago. I left them back in time. And I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I abandoned myself in that way. I cannot believe I let go of my dreams in that way. And the deep sort of pain of self-abandonment rolled through my body, and I was sobbing into that pillow. The whole pillow was wet. Yeah, like I bawled my eyes out because I was like, I couldn't believe it. I literally couldn't believe that I had done this to myself, and this is what I I couldn't believe that I was willing to pay for this business's version of success with my dreams, because that's what happened. I started this business, and when what my first woman Black coach, I've mentioned her in other videos before, um she asked me, what do I want though? What do I want this business to look like? And what dreams do I want it to support? And I dreamed the biggest dream that I could at that time of having a national program here in Jamaica that would fund every single bit of care that would fund every single bit of care and support and career advancement and education and just setting up the life and breaking the cycle of teen motherhood. I'm talking about everything from pediatricians and gynecologists to mindset coaching and career coaching to kindergarten and school for the kids to job placement and apprenticeships to mentoring and life coaching and financial coaching, like all psychotherapy, the full 9 yards, as much support as possible to break this cycle, because I have personally seen how this cycle is just perpetuated over and over again. And we can't, like, if you look at reports, when any international aid organization reports on teen motherhood in any small island developing state like Jamaica or any developing nation, you will see the same cycle over and over and over again. And it rarely gets broken. I know friends, I know mentees who are teen moms, and people who are close to me in my family who are teen moms. And so it is a cycle that I am familiar with. I won't say intimately because I'm not a mother, right? I was not a teen mother. And I have not given birth to any children. So I'm not going to say I'm intimately familiar with this, but I have seen its effects, and I've seen the cycle repeat itself. I was so clear when I started my business in 2015, and the vision that I um really mapped out and dreamed up in 2016 was one of that problem. That's what I want to dedicate any kind of money that I make, any extra, like, I just need to make enough to take care of my family and take care of my expenses. And then that's the thing I'm going after. I was so clear. And so I was like, well, okay, then this business needs to make enough money to pay me and give me what I need, give me the finances and the funding I need to do that. And from that moment, the goal was no longer doing that, creating that reality and creating that project idea. The goal was no longer that. The goal was making the business work. And the goal was making the business work by any means necessary. And what that ended up look like was people pleasing. It was being in the back end of people's businesses for years, not taking too dang long to raise my prices. And when I did, still over delivering, way above what I was asked, way above what was in the contract. I can't even tell you, like, the story I told myself was they needed all of these things that I was doing, and if I didn't do it, they wouldn't see success. And unfortunately, I mean, to this day, that has been proven true because the people who get the best results from me are often the people who I'm able to carte blanche, just step in and really support them in their journey and in their launches and their funnels. And when I'm able to do that, that's really when I see my clients be the most successful. No, that's probably a me thing. There's probably some kind of, like, something I'm doing that I'm not realizing that I'm doing, that I need to codify to then have it be replicable without me being there and adding whatever je ne sais quoi that I add. But bottom line, y'all, I stayed at the same price range for way too dang long. And even when I raised my prices, I was still over delivering. And because my capacity over the years being this right hand person for so long was so stretched and stretched and stretched. And it did get some chances to recover because there was breaks. Like, it's not like I took holidays. That's I wasn't like ever really extremely burnt out. Um the agency was really the only time that I got that burnt out, or got burnt out, period. And so it's not like my capacity didn't have some wiggle room and some recovery room, but I had been doing this for 9 years. And this year, 2025, was the year that I was doing this in the most expansive way I had ever done it. And so, of course, I was taxed. And so, of course, I needed help. And so, of course, not only was I over delivering, undercharging because I still wasn't charging for everything that I was delivering, but I was also bleeding money. And y'all, I it all came to a head that night. This me lying there bawling in that bed. And the next day was the final full day of the retreat. And the end of that day, I sat down with my coach. Everybody else had gone to bed and we were talking. And she was like, "Yeah, Chelsea, I think you're ready." And I agreed with her. I agreed with her and I decided to raise my rates and to charge for everything that I was actually delivering. And we had like I told you, we were doing big girl CFO financial management because we'd already worked out. I'd already told her every single dang thing that I did, and we had already priced it all out, and we already had the package prices. And so all that was left was for me to go home and write the email. Write the email that I would be sending to my clients to announce, hey, I am raising my rates. And so that's what I did. I wrote that email. And actually, I had a meeting with one of my clients right after the retreat. And we met up in person. We were working on her business. We were making projections for the following year. I was so excited about what we were going to do. But I did let her know I'm raising my rates. And I told her I would send her a brief with the new rates so that she could make her decision. Long story short, it was a no, y'all. Every single one of those clients left. Every last one. And they all told me, Chelsea, we agree with this price increase. You should charge for everything that you are delivering. And quite frankly, you should have raised your rates a while back. But at this point, that is not something that we can add to our budget. And so we're going to have to end our relationship here. Y'all, I wasn't devastated because I low key expected it because I knew and I think a part of the reason why I was crying that second night too was because I realized that it was gonna take it was likely that it would take a good bit to come back from this. And that is a big part of the cost of this self-abandonment that I had perpetuated, this people pleasing cycle that I was in of like undercharging and over delivering for people. Um, I I realized that it's not something that I could come back from very quickly or very easily. And so even it had cost me my dreams for the past 9 years, and I saw that it had actually set me back in my business because for my level of expertise, I was not making the revenue that I should have been making in my business. And I didn't have the profit margins that I should have had in my business for how long I have been doing this and for my level of expertise. And so I think I was crying as well because I saw how I had actually set myself back in the business as a result of this cycle of undercharging, over delivering, people pleasing, perfectionism, situationship. And so when I saw that, and because I had already talked to my coach about what the possibilities were, I I I wasn't surprised when my full client roster just up and left. But um I was very it did shake me. It did shake me. Um and I knew why they left. They left because what they signed the contract for, I was delivering much more than that. And so they signed the contract for specific deliverables and they agreed to pay me for those deliverables. And I'm now turning around and charging them for deliverables that they never agreed to. And the second reason is the sort of perception of me that they had in their minds and perception of my value in their business because of how much I did without saying that I was doing it and without them agreeing that I was doing it, right? It was not in the contract. I didn't give them like a weekly update to say, hey, these are the things that I did. And even when I did, this wasn't, they didn't sign on to that, right? That's not what they signed the contract for. And so their self perception of my value to their business was such that it's not like I don't want to say it was less because I think that that gives a certain idea of how they thought of me, and that's not the idea that I want to give. But I do think that they couldn't add that line item to their budget in such a short time frame, one, and two, they weren't motivated to figure it out because I wasn't as explicit from the get go about what I needed and what I was going to deliver. Needed in terms of pay and was going to deliver in terms of my standard of excellence. And so, because they didn't agree to it from the get go, and because I wasn't vocal about it from the beginning, again, people pleasing, fawning, trying to make them like me, this is the situation we ended up in. And side note, y'all, this is very easy to end up in this kind of situation with any offer for anyone. You advance your expertise, you grow in your business, your needs change, and you have a client roster that and even like your what you are delivering in your offers changes, right? And you see how what you are pricing things as and the mess and like how you talk about the deliverables in your offer, it needs to change, right? And so you increase the price and you like really communicate in a comprehensive way all the new deliverables and the new transformation that you're helping people to achieve. But that's not what they agreed to in the contract. And it's also not how they perceive your value to their business because their value is still locked into the old version of you, the contract that they signed way back when, right? And so it's very easy for clients who don't get that to leave because your messaging has not created a perception that matches what you actually deliver, and you end up in a position where you now have to, it's not starting from the bottom because you are starting from somewhere, but you do need to figure out how to refine your messaging to and to raise your perception to that level of your current delivery and your current price point or your new but has low-key always been delivery and the price point that you should have been charging multiple years ago, when you really notice that like I deliver at this level for my clients, etc., right? And so it's very easy for this kind of thing to happen, but it was an extreme case with me because the people pleasing that I'm talking about, y'all, was so gross. The fawning I'm talking about was so insidious in a way because it was really manipulative on my part. I have to own that. Like, it was not cute. I wanted these women to like me so that they could do things for me. And I never actually asked for what I wanted. Right? I was low key like it's this thing of like not asking for what you need because you're afraid that you're not gonna get it and you're thinking it's not even possible for you to get it, right? So you downplay your skill, you don't ask for the price point that you need to ask for, but you do everything you can to over deliver for these women so that they'll like you enough to do something for you. Collaborate with you, promote you to their audience, create an offer with you, like pay you more, offer a raise to you. That kind of those are the vibes that I was operating on though. Not healthy, not cute. And this is what I mean when I say like I leaned into this business growth goal in a way that would perpetuate and exacerbate every single unhealthy people pleasing tendency that I had in my life. The great thing about this though is that once I realized what was happening and once all of my clients left, 2025 was actually a massive gift to me. I walked into 2025 like, okay, I mean, we had talked about, me and my coach had talked about doing like some kind of done for you copywriting or doing coaching, because coaching is even easier for me than copywriting. And y'all, the clients just showed up. I just posted and they just showed up. And I was booking coaching clients. And at one point my client roster for coaching clients was full, and it was the easiest work. It was the absolute easiest work. And so I what that allowed me is a restoration of my capacity to myself, and a turning of my creative energy to myself. And best of all, an opportunity to prove to myself that the dreams of Chelsea from 2016 that existed in her heart are not mutually exclusive to building this business. And I can watch myself follow through on creating the desires that I have in my life in real time. And watching myself prove that to myself, absolutely invaluable. Absolutely invaluable. I thank Jesus that I had the opportunity in 2025 to watch myself do this. I talked about this in another video. I got into strength training. I started going to the market every single week. I got back into my Spanish and my French. I started writing again. Or is that number five? I started writing again, writing fiction, writing poetry, reading, like getting back into TTRPGs and RPGs in general. Like there was so much. My little geeky science brain getting back into learning, and learning in a really deep and meaningful way, because I am like talking to Claude and like absorbing knowledge, and really trying to understand concepts and things that I am just randomly coming across on YouTube. About politics and health and tech, and like it was a beautiful time. It was financially uncomfortable, don't get me wrong, because I was making less than what I made in 2024. However, it was a homecoming to myself. And more than anything, it really showed me how there is such a deep psychological cost to undervaluing what you offer for your clients and overworking, and having your people pleasing tendencies bleed into your business, which they will, because business will expose every single skeleton that you have in the graveyard of your heart. Somebody, I saw that quote from somebody years ago and it stuck. So naturally, people pleasing, perfectionism, all those things will bleed into your business when you struggle with those things. And I think this year of homecoming for me really exposed how true that is, and how much I fell prey to the lie that having my desires while I built my business was impossible, and the two were completely mutually exclusive, and I had to do one before I did the other. Crap. Not true. Not true. And I watched myself prove it in real time. And I was, it was a very I had been in the back end of people's business for such a long time, cheering for them, making sure they had everything they needed. And I think in 2025, I finally had the space and the mental capacity and the creative energy to turn that back onto my own business. And I saw the difference that that made, and the difference in who I was and what I was interested in and what I was fired up about, all of the passions that I had when I started my business in 2015. If you've ever heard me talk about like being passionate about food and food systems, and being passionate about, like I talked about teen moms here, like all of those desires that were in my heart back then just flared to life in 2025. And so of course I entered 2026 like, bruh, we have to figure out we have to do this business in a way that puts boundaries around this creative energy for me, because this I am not giving up again. I refuse to abandon myself again and abandon my desires for the sake of trying to build this business. They are not mutually exclusive. I will figure it out. Okay? And I was like, all right. And so I started to build the systems, but I'll be honest, I'm still stuck. Still figuring it out because my capacity is doing a really interesting thing right now, and I think it started last year when I came back to myself in such a big way, where I think it's always been the case, but because I'm not pushing and overworking now, it's even more evident where I can really only do two things well in any day. Like, it's really only two. Even if it's five little things, I can do 5. I can maybe do 3 little things or maybe 4 little things. But, like, I'm not moving and being as productive, in terms of just, like, output per unit of time as I used to be. And so I think that's because I hold so much more now. I'm like I'm walking around with these desires and with these passions and with these things that I want to see in the world in addition to walking around with my business. And so I'm still figuring out like how to do both and how to make the finances make sense and yeah, I'm still figuring it out. But it one thing is very clear. I refuse to self-abandon again. And I once I saw what people pleasing was costing me, it it ended people pleasing in my life in a way that it will not come back and me not see it and cut it off at the root. Like it just won't. Because I just clearly see what it's cost me and I refuse to pay that price again. Refuse categorically. And so this actually turned into a gift. This actually turned into a gift and something really meaningful, very uncomfortable because as I said, the finances last year were not the finances in 2024. They were not the same. But I rediscovered myself in a really beautiful way. I'm going through my notes to see if there's anything else that I wanted to share with y'all about this story. Yeah, I think that's it, y'all. I think that's it. So if this resonated with you in any way, any kind of people pleasing, any kind of perfectionism tendencies, the overworking, undercharging vibe, the sort of your excellence is up here and everybody else's excellence is at your level of good, that kind of dynamic. Or just any kind of like self-abandonment, putting your dreams on hold. If any of that resonates with you, if that vibed with you in any way, I would love to hear your story. So feel free to drop a comment below, or you can reach out to me directly on Instagram, DM me. I'm happy to talk one-on-one. My DMs are open. If you are hearing me talk about launching and refining your messaging and changing the perception of your offer and what you deliver to match what you actually deliver. And you're like, Chelsea, I want help with how to do this. This is what I do for everybody I work with. So if you want to work with me, the link is also in the description box below. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for witnessing the transformation real time. Witnessing this process of me figuring it out day after day. Um, Thank you for tuning in. I will see you in the next one. Take care.